What was your lowest point before success? Story 1. I'm not successful, but I know for sure that right now I'm at the lowest point in my life. The state paid for more than half of my tuition and my parents had been paying the rest of it since I was a child. So when I went to college, I felt a huge obligation to listen to what my parents said and study whatever it was they wanted me to. They were immigrants who weren't given the opportunities I had been given. They wanted me to be an engineer, so I studied that. But I hated it. I hated engineering so much. I had hated math in high school, but I was smart. And so I entered college with calculus and statistics credits. Once I got to college, I realized that I never had to take a math class again if I didn't want to. Sitting in an engineering class made me realize just how much I hated high-level math. They say that when you take your first engineering class, you know whether it's for you or not. That if you took things apart as a kid and put them back together, then it was a sign of things to come. I never was that kid. I never wanted to be an engineer. It had never appealed to me. Studying 10 hours a day so that I could grow up to design gears and valves for refrigerators wasn't what I had signed up for in life. And coming to the realization that I could never be an engineer ruined my already non-existent relationship with my parents. If you have Asian parents, you understand. Growing up the firstborn male of an Asian family is tough. Your parents don't know how to connect with you. They expect you to carry on the family name. By the time I was 22, I had had maybe 5 conversations with my parents that didn't involve getting good grades in school. When they found out I didn't want to be an engineer, they flipped out. The once-a-week phone calls from mom changed to once a month. I've never had a girlfriend. I've had sex one time in my entire life. My relationship with my parents was pretty much non-existent all my life, but it was the only emotional support I've ever received. Losing it was fucking tough. I became an isolated loner. I was young and immature. I had everything handed to me on a silver platter, and I spat on it instead of eating it graciously. So I switched majors to study international relations. I loved every bit of my undergraduate studies. I had found my passion. I loved studying Nietzsche and world history. I loved learning about globalization and international business. Unlike a lot of people here, I don't feel like I wasted my time at college. I studied hard and graduated with honors in 4 years. Studying 10 hours a day so that I could travel the world while helping build schools in Africa or helping foreign sweatshop workers unionize was what I had signed up for in life. I did so well because I really loved what I was studying. It felt like it was the only relevant field in the world to me. Unfortunately, the school I went to lumps international relations degrees under political science, and so when employers see my resume, they think I want to be a politician and that I chose a useless field to study. I never felt that way. I never fucking will. I graduated college and moved back home. I worked 2 jobs and am taking college business courses too. I have 1 day a week off and I spent that day studying for my business courses. At the restaurant I work at, all the waiters shortchange me on tip outs, so I make maybe half what I'm supposed to be making. At the nonprofit I volunteer at, I call people and beg them for money so that the nonprofit can make its rent. All I want to do is move out and find a job where I can support myself. All I want to do in life is not be stuck. Maybe start my career, but the job market is rough and people don't respect the major I chose in college. I live at home. I'm lonely as fuck and I'm dead tired. But I know that one day this should pay off. It's not all bad. The nonprofit is only 2 blocks from the White House. A lot of shitty stuff comes out of that building, but some good things come out of there too. Every day for lunch I sit on the lawn there and think that there's no other way I could have been an engineer. That all I want to do is make the world a better place, and that one day, hopefully, I will. Story 2. The year is 2008, and an optimistic young articulate has just left university with high hopes and dreams for the future. He has primed his CV, resume, and sent it round to all the employers that would get him the first rung on the ladder of his dream career. He got the grades, he had the work experience, he rehearsed his interview technique. He was ready. Then the credit crunch happened. All the graduate employers shut their doors. There was no new hiring going on. No one got back to me. No graduate jobs. No chance. So I did the only thing I could do, moved back in with Mom. and put my CV everywhere that I could. There was no response from any graduate employers, but I would do absolutely anything at this stage. I picked up various industrial jobs because they were the only jobs going. I packed meat into meat pies, fed plaster and water into a hopper to make modeling clay for 12 hours a day, stood in front of the oven in an industrial bakery in 300-degree heat with 3 layers of protective clothing. I packed books into boxes, sealed envelopes, and I washed dishes in a holiday park. I was a housekeeper at a hotel, and I made rocker shafts on a lathe in a motorbike factory. The hours were long, and the pay was crap, but I was working, and taking a measure of pride in the fact that, despite the recession, I was a contributing member of society. I knew things were crap, but that they would improve. Then the industrial laundry happened. This place services the local NHS trusts and nursing homes. So as you can imagine, the type of laundry we have to deal with is in a fairly nasty state. Piss, shit, blood, vomit. All of it needed to be washed. My first job at the laundry was on sorting. This involved standing in front of a conveyor belt full of the foulest bed sheets and medical gowns, and throwing them into the correct basket so they can be washed at the correct setting. One basket for whites, one for colored washes, etc. Also bear in mind that this was summer, and some of this laundry had been sitting in the back of a lorry for upwards of 24 hours by the time we got to it. I had to ask to get gloves. They got me the crap plastic disposable ones that don't protect your hands from anything. I should note at this point that some stuff came back in such a bad state that it was wrapped in a red carrier bag with the words, "Incinerate only" stamped on it. Nasty stuff, but I have a strong stomach, so I persevered. Then there was the production line, where you would take the clean sheets / pillowcases, etc., and put them into the folding machine so they could be ironed and packed. It was at least clean, but the boredom factor was almost too much. It was soul-destroying. I felt stupider with every shift I finished, as my brain just atrophied from underuse. But that job wasn't even the worst. That honor belongs to the maintenance engineer job. I've got at that hellhole. Picture, if you will, an industrial-sized tumble dryer, one where the drum is just big enough for a human to scrunch himself up and clamber inside. Yep, I had to get inside these sweltering hot dryers for 12 hours a day. Why, you ask? Well, remember those red bags that I told you about? The ones with laundry so foul its only fit purpose is to be burnt to ash. Not all of them get burned. Some of them make it through. Some of them weld themselves to the inside of the tumble dryer. Someone needs to go in with a hammer and chisel and get that shit off. That was the absolute nadir of my working life. I spent 6 months at that shithole doing all kinds of shit jobs. Some of them are bad, some of them merely poor, but nothing compares to the feeling when you're trapped in the drum of a tumble dryer with nothing but a hammer and chisel, a torch, and dozens of adult nappies, ultra-soiled sheets, and God knows what else in little liquid-filled pockets of doom. That was the first time I ever questioned myself. I remember sitting outside, having a cigarette, thinking to myself, is this it? All the struggle, all the academia, all the late nights and study jams, all those 3 a.m. crunch sessions in the library, the 20 grand I spent getting a degree for this. For a shitty minimum wage job popping shit sits inside Satan's arsehole. Is this really all I'm worth? I nearly called it quits. I nearly didn't make it out the other side. But luckily I kept my head down and kept applying for jobs. In the end I got lucky and got an interview for an admin assistant job at a careers advice center. The agent told me there were over 300 applicants for that one job. In the interview, the lady asked me why I had done so many random and horrible-sounding jobs. I told her that my friends who did not take the shit jobs are now unemployable, because they have been sitting at home waiting for the phone to ring, while I have been learning new skills and building character this whole time. I was hired on the spot. 40 other people didn't even get an interview, they told me later. From that job, I moved to an insurance company where I started making the teas, and I worked my way up to an SME role, subject matter expert for those who don't speak corporate, in the space of 2 years. The words perseverance and grit get mentioned a lot in my performance reviews. If it's crunch time, they knew that I could stomach the extra hours without a grumble. If there was a problem, They knew that my wide range of experience meant I had a knack for thinking on my feet and adapting to new workloads. Currently, I am still doing SME work, but I am doing it as a self-employed contractor. Last month, I paid myself £3,000 after tax. Moral of the story: take the job. If you are unemployed, any job is better than no job. I would never have got that admin assistant job if I had not busted my arse making a name for myself at the employment agency, in their shit industrial jobs. Chiseling shit out the inside of an industrial tumble dryer got me a high-paying job in insurance. Story 3. Success is always going to be determined by others to some respect. We all have an inherent temptation to determine our own success by comparing the success of others. 2 years ago, I was living in a shitty-ass apartment in the ghetto because I was in love with a foreign man that lied to me for the 2 years prior to having a wife. I tried to work things out. For a long time, I was prone to shitty relationships for a number of reasons, and I definitely was suffering from some bodily health and mental health issues. It ended with him abandoning me to go to another country. I was supposed to wait for him to simultaneously witness the birth of his son and leave his wife, remember kids, had a lot of issues. I fucked around with an ex while working as a waitress, despite the fact I had a college degree, graduated right at the height of the recession. Everyone thought I was a fuck-up, and most of them didn't know the whole story. So my lowest point was realizing I was abandoned, that good intentions meant nothing, and I was living in a ghetto, practically starving in the dead of winter, because I had a really fucked up idea of love, romance, and a seemingly insurmountable sense of pride. And I had a best friend. We had been fuck buddies in college and always kept in touch, and I convinced him to visit me. I moved in with him 4 months later, a state away. My success now: a 2-year relationship with my best friend and a wonderful man, a solid job that I've received 2 promotions in, the prospect of our own house, and I'm considering opening a restaurant of my own. I still wait tables, but make almost 30 more now, and work for wonderful people that offer us benefits. Story 4. 13 years ago, I was sitting alone in an armory in the basement of a U.S. Army barracks, shit-faced on Jim Beam and putting about 4 ounces of pressure on a 5 pounds trigger of a loaded, chambered, and cocked Beretta 9 that was residing in my mouth. CLP tastes very, very bad, too. I was being formally investigated for the loss of some very sensitive equipment that I had nothing whatsoever to do with, but it was looking like they were going to railroad me anyway. And that would mean a felony, Leavenworth, dishonorable discharge, and little prospect for a future afterwards. And also my fiance was trying very hard to sleep with another man, and not being particularly sly about it. I was pretty much ready to declare life a failed experiment. Why am I still here? I don't know. For whatever reason, I didn't do it, and with the help of a wise old supply sket, I managed to prove my innocence. I got the hell out of the Army at the end of my 3 years. Since then, I have learned that the Army wasn't universally shit, and that luck plays a huge role in your experience of it. I later served a stint in the National Guard full of good leadership, great comrades, and had a very good time of it. I eventually realized that you just have to roll with the bad, discarding it when you can, and be fiercely loyal to the good that comes your way. 13 years later, I'm making more money than I need as a cop in my hometown, married to an awesome hippie chick that rocks my world. My job can have its rough times, but ultimately beats the hell out of being stuck in an office and is a pretty varied and exciting way to put food on the table and pay the electric bill. I avoid drama and the people who foster it, and genuinely enjoy life 9 days out of 10. Story 5. In 2010, I was newly divorced, recovering from a second shoulder surgery, and my company approached me, said that I was not completing my work in a timely manner, so I can take a severance and quit, or they will review me again 2 weeks after the offer expires, and I will most likely be fired. Long story short, the manager hated me and went over my VP's head to get me fired. VP fought back and was at least able to get me severance. From 2010 to 2011, I was out of work. I made 3 months of pay stretch until the beginning of December, and at that point, I was out of money. I've had a lucky break though. Just 2 days before Christmas, I settled my workers' comp case, the reason for my surgeries to my shoulder, and most likely part of the reason to let me go, and got 10K. Unfortunately, being late on all my bills added a ton of fees, and in one shot, I paid 6K to get back to current. So 4K was all I had left, and in February, I had to stop paying everyone again. It got right down to the wire for a while. Even with money from my tax return, I was about done. House was in foreclosure, and all I could do was pay for water, gas, cable, and power. Food was getting scarce, and before anyone bitches about me needing cable, it was for internet access. I paid $30 a month so I could keep applying for work. I sent out over 2,000 resumes in a year. Things were getting ugly. I had a friend that saw my plea on FB for anyone with a lead for a job to let me know. He asked for my resume in May. By the beginning of July, I hadn't heard anything, so I asked him about it. He was surprised I hadn't been contacted. I placed my resume in several managers' hands and I got a call. Long story short, I'd landed a job, no, a career, that was paying 10K more than I was previously making. After that, I worked everything out with my bill collectors except Amex, and I just settled with them a couple months ago. And now I am back on my feet in a big way. And I know what it's like to be broke, but not destitute. I had a friend recently post that she was having an old PE-isher for dinner while her 2 kids were having cereal. I sent them a large pizza and a couple 2 liters of Coke, and then took her to Costco the next day and bought her close to $200 in groceries. She said she was very grateful but embarrassed. I explained I knew what it's like to be that broke, and it is never easy to swallow your pride to accept help when you need it. Told her there is no shame in accepting help when you are out of options. She was out of work from knee surgery. She doesn't make but a third of what I do, and she has 2 kids to take care of. But being out of work means no money coming in. In almost any other time in my life, I would not have been able to buy groceries like I did for her without feeling a serious strain on my budget. For the first time, I could drop $200 and walk away without ever blinking. I have reached a milestone of financial success, and I gotta pay it forward. Story 6. Lowest point. How about having to go 2 weeks without food, except for a loaf of bread and 1 jar of jam? I rationed off 2 slices of bread a day and a smear of jam. I had no other food and no anything else. And having to constantly stay in bed after work or stay away from my apartment. Because if I put my feet down, my small closet-like apartment had fleas that would feast on me and my legs. My apartment was 10 by 15. After a month of the brush one leg off then the other for my nightly flea check, then lay on bed until it was time to go to work. The fleas eventually died off because they had nothing to eat. Now I make a comfy low 6-figure tax-free salary, live in the Caribbean. I'm not rich, but if I wanted to buy a 100K car, I could do this cash, easily without a blink. I saw a show once that had this millionaire on it. He said, there are 2 types of millionaires. Ones that look like millionaires with the huge house and sports cars, but have no money in the bank. Then there are the millionaires that have the average house and average car, but put all their money in the bank. After seeing that, I said, I want to be the second kind of millionaire. I will be retiring in 6 years, and I will retire at 49. I hope his words bring someone the same inspiration as he did to me. Oh yeah, and education isn't always the goal towards success. I didn't finish university, so in actuality, all I have is a high school diploma.